is the difference between him appearing on stage and us as presenters, you and myself appearing on stage? What is the difference? What do you think? Again, there are no wrong answers.
Yes. Actually, I'm not following him, but as I can see from the picture, I see that there is a pen on his hand. So he's ready to sign his signature for anyone who is asking for him.
Yeah.
That's just my guess. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, there is no need to really follow what he is doing or his pictures, but he is quite a famous actor, right? We agree about that he has lots of fans. And when he appears on stage, he doesn't have to do anything. He already has all the attention of the audience. And that's the biggest difference between him and between us as presenters, because we need to grab attention of the audience in the very beginning. Because if we don't, pretty soon the audience could lose attention, unlike with Brad Pitt. So what I decided to do in order to grab your attention, well, first of all, I put there pictures of donuts. I asked you questions, and now I want to give you some quick tips in case something urgent comes up and you have to leave right now. Right this minute you have to leave, but I still want you to get something useful from this presentation, and I will, from the very beginning, I will give you several quick tips on what to do to try to improve your presentation. First things that you could do immediately without specific training. You need to stand up straight, have your chin up, and surprisingly smile. Smile is something that is very much underrated by all presenters, by all speakers. Whereas smile is actually a sign of confidence. When you smile, the audience is much more appealing. You are much more appealing to the audience, and audience receives you much better. The second thing that you could do immediately without training is slow down and pause. Yes, slowing down and pausing from time to time is a sign of confidence, and again, makes you more appealing presenter. Another item is to project your voice. Project and don't drop the volume in the end of the sentence, because quite often, I'm sure you have encountered that too, that quite often we drop the volume in the end of the sentence. And when we start the sentence, we are all enthusiastic and the volume is nice, but when we get towards the end of the sentence, we almost cannot hear anything at all. So these things happen quite often, and the idea is not to drop the volume in the end of the sentence. It requires a little bit of attention, but still try to not drop the volume in the end of the sentence. If you are making a virtual presentation, it's important to face the microphone, because if I turn my face away, especially if I'm not turning on the video, then the volume becomes lower, and again, it's not that appealing when the volume changes. When we are doing the virtual presentation with the video, it's important to avoid the busy clothes and busy background. Why? Well, because the audience will start paying attention to what's going on in the background. Just like in my background, right? You probably could guess what is the background in my case. The background is from the cartoon Totoro. So I like this cartoon, it's very fun and I enjoy it very much. Another item that you could do as a presenter when presenting in person is, when you don't know what to do with your hands, you can drop them along your body. It seems like it's not very comfortable position, but from the audience perspective, it's actually one of the most natural positions when your hands are dropped along the body. When we don't know which gestures to do, what to make out of it, just drop them along the body and continue speaking. Of course, gestures are important, but dropping the hands along the body is natural. Don't be afraid to do that. Instead of keeping your hands in front of you or putting them behind you, dropping your hand along your sides is quite natural. All right, so these are some quick tips that if you need to leave right now, you still hopefully get a little bit of this presentation. Now we'll get to the main portion. And this main portion, again, the first thing I want to do is ask you, what do you want to hear about today? Of course, I prepared something, I have something, but maybe you have some thoughts and maybe you have something that you want to clarify.
I listened to the Vietnamese Toastmaster Club many speeches, but I think the lack of emotions in the speech. It depends on the speaker, but speaking with emotional is lacking in the Vietnamese Toastmaster Club.
All right, great, thank you. Well, we'll try to address that. And another aspect, please interrupt if something is not clear or if you have questions. Please just unmute yourself and interrupt. The questions are the most important because I'm here not just to give you something that I prepared. Most important for me is to answer your questions and to make it useful for you. Of course, I prepared something for today, and what I prepared is the presentation, how to structure the presentation, what to do in various stages of the presentation, also the PowerPoint, how to prepare the PowerPoint, and how to prepare yourself for the presentation and how to increase your confidence. So this is what is prepared for today. Now, what we will discuss is why, what, and how to do it. I'm an engineer, and one of the aspects of engineering is trying to figure out why something is happening. Why do we need to do this and not that? So I tried to put why in everything of today's presentation. So why communication skills are so important and why we need to improve them even if we are quite comfortable in presenting. Well, because we are all in sales. We are all in sales whether we are talking with friends, then we want to convince them about something. Whether we are talking with our colleagues, we want them to take our point of view. When we are talking to our managers, our bosses, we want them to promote us or to accept our position. When we are talking to our maybe students, we want them to again to learn what we are taking, to understand what we are talking about. So whether we want it or not, we are all in sales in one way or another. And it is known that the good work will speak for itself. That's very true. But if we are not communicating well, it will take much longer. And why people who are speaking well, why they should have an advantage if you are doing a better work than them. So that's why I think we all should try to constantly update our speaking skills. And we'll start today with the presentation. So I view presentation myself as a good meal in the restaurant. In some fancy restaurant, when we come to the restaurant, first of all, we can smell the good food sometime up front, right? And there are various stages of the good meal if it is a fancy meal. And the very first part of the good meal in the restaurant is appetizer. What is an appetizer? Appetizer is an introduction to the meal. It introduces the meal, gives a little bit hint of what is coming up in the meal later on. And the same should go about the presentation. We should have a small portion of our presentation that introduces what will come up in the main part of the presentation. For example, I work at Boeing and I work with airplanes made out of composite materials. And when I was making a presentation not so long ago, I started the presentation this way. I put this picture of a ship on the screen without saying anything. And it actually drew the attention of the managers, of the engineers that were there. Why ship? We are working on the planes. And then I explained that this is not just a ship. It's actually a first ship that used metal in construction. But we cannot tell that it uses metal because it looks like it is made of wood. So they did not take advantage of the metal in the proper way. And then I immediately switched to this picture. When we look at our airplane, we cannot immediately tell whether it makes out of composites or of metal. And there is a question, are we taking a best advantage of composite materials? So this was the beginning of my presentation, and then I went to explain and to talk a little bit more about how we can do better with composite materials. Another example, my colleague started his presentation this way. Something that looks like a bundle of wires, and also he grabbed the attention of the audience right away. And then he put the title of the presentation, Software Quality Insurance. And actually, a colleague is from Vietnam, working at Boeing. And later on, he went to explain that if we don't put the quality control, the software will not be doing very well. So these are the examples of the slides that we somehow should put in the beginning of the presentation to maybe present some non-standard angle on what is coming in the main part. This will grab attention from the start to your presentation. And then comes the main course of the presentation. So let's start with the main course. And for starting, let's define the main question. What is the most important in any presentation? What do you think? Again, there are no wrong answers. Is it you as a presenter? Or is it the material you present? Or maybe it is something else entirely. So what do you think? What is the most important in any presentation?
The material.
Thank you. Thank you. Material is definitely very, very, very important. What's any other thoughts? What else could be important?
I think it's a combination of both the presenter and the content material.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, all of that is definitely very, very important. But the most important part of any presentation is actually not we as presenters, not our material, but it's actually the audience. The audience is the most important part of any presentation, because as you know, the same material should be presented differently to, for example, kids of 10 years old, right? Or 18-year-olds or adults. The same material should be structured differently, should be presented somewhat differently. So the audience is very important, because as you know, communication is not what we say, and it's not what we said, but it's what is understood by the listeners, what is understood by the audience. That's what's the most important. And that's why everything what we do should enhance the audience ability to understand the purpose of the speech, the message of the speech. That's why the audience is the most important part of any presentation. Any questions so far? All right.
What can we do to enhance the audience ability to understand our message through our speech?
Thank you. Thank you. Great questions. We're getting exactly to that. Thank you. So in any presentation, what we need to do is to help the audience solve their problems. And the audience may not even know that they have this problem, but we need to explain it to them that this is a problem. For example, if we are teaching math to the students, they don't know that they are not aware of some important mathematical concepts, and we are explaining it to them. And when we are talking to our superiors, to our bosses, we again want to help them to solve their problems. Because if we approach all the presentations from this angle, we want to help the audience solve some sort of problems. It is clear that we are presenting to give something to the audience. And it is very clear, you probably saw many presenters who are not caring too much about the audience. And it is very, very visible that they care mostly about themselves. And on the other hand, there are presenters who are there to communicate with the audience, to help them with their problems. And especially when talking with the bosses and when making presentation for the bosses, it's important sometimes to ask how you can help to resolve their problems. When I was talking to my boss's boss several times, I specifically, after several attempts of talking to him, on the third time, I specifically asked how I can help you to solve the problems. I know that your organization is struggling with this and with that. Maybe my experience could help you solve something, to help you improve something. And that specific conversation went much, much better, because my boss's boss viewed me that I came not to take something from him, but to give something to him. And that should be our attitude. And another aspect is, if we are talking to our boss and we want something from them, from our bosses, one of the aspects is to ask for that, maybe in the beginning or in the end of presentation. Because if we don't ask, our superiors may not exactly understand what we want from them. So being explicit about what we want is important. But the most important is we always, for all the presentations, we present to give something to the audience. And now the question is to answer what was asked, how we can do that. And the most important part is to decide for ourselves, as a result of our presentation, what the audience members would think, feel, or do differently. Think, feel, or do differently. Something that they were not doing before. For example, comedians on stage, when they come and present entertaining speeches, they want us to feel better, right? When I present my work to colleague engineers, I want them to start using this method they have not used before. So something, think, feel, or do differently that they have not done before as a result of our presentation. So that's a mindset that we should have when we are preparing the presentation. And what helps in that is formulating the main point of our presentation in one sentence. Not in a paragraph, maybe not in 3-4 sentences, in one sentence. Why? Why one sentence? Why 3 sentences is long? Because if it is one sentence, it makes us as presenters focus on this main goal of the presentation. And it makes us formulate the main points of the presentations better. But the most important is, if we as presenters, we cannot formulate the goal in one sentence, then how do we expect our audience to remember some main points of the presentation? So it's important for ourselves to formulate the goal of the presentation in a single sentence. We don't need to tell it to anybody. It could be just for us to better remember. One sentence. And here are examples of a sentence describing the goal of the presentation. Help kids understand the math, that math is fun. Yes, that could be the goal of the presentation. Importance of quality insurance could be goal of presentation. Use the new method that reduces cost for engineers could be the goal of the presentation. So these are some of the examples. Again, you don't have to put it on the slides, just formulate for yourself. And to practice, let's try and see what is the main idea of the presentation that I'm providing to you right now. What do you think? How you could formulate the main goal of today's presentation? There are no wrong answers. There are so many different ways to formulate it. It's just getting used to the idea that it should be a single sentence. So what do you think?
Well, one example that I read the book called "Working with You is Killing Me." The person is so annoying to work with, rather than saying so much bad thing about him. I could say, "Killing me when I'm working with you."
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes, and I'm asking, I'm making the presentation, but what do you think is the goal of my presentation?
Yes, I think that one of the goals of your presentation is that you expect us as audience to remember the things that we can do or we should avoid to have an effective presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great formulation. Yes. I, of course, tried to formulate it myself, and I formulated it like this: what to do to improve communication. But there are so many different ways to do that. And when we have this goal, one sentence goal, everything we do should serve the purpose of getting this message across. And also, remembering this one sentence goal will help you to recover if you forget something in the middle of the presentation. So far what we have is some interesting start that we should have, that we should remember and not forget about the audience, and one sentence presentation goal. So that's what we covered so far. Any questions, comments?
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
So finally, how can the speaker know that his or her audience understand the message?
Yes, that's a very good question. And one of the aspects is to look at the audience directly if you are speaking in person. And I'm sure that if you look at people in the audience, you will see if they understand or not. Another way of doing that is to ask questions. It actually serves a different purpose also, but asking question also will tell you if they understand the audience. So it's if the audience understand what you are talking about. So interacting with the audience and getting some information from the audience, asking them question is very efficient in terms of seeing if they understand what you are talking about or not.
I got it.
And the presentation structure, so far we have introduction, the main body, and conclusion, the dessert. So in the introduction, maybe some interesting pictures, the question, but we also need to keep attention of the audience. Otherwise, you can see very often, I certainly experience that as a presenter, when the audience is falling asleep, when the presentation is not very interesting. So how to avoid this? One aspect is to be very specific and to use personal examples. That may be not very interesting, but very specific examples are very important. Second is asking questions. Asking questions keeps attention of the audience. And one of the most important aspects of the asking the question is not only ask the question, but wait for the answer. Means pause, to stop talking. When we interrupt the flow of the presentation and pause and stop talking, the audience feels that something is not quite right and they look up. If they were doing something on their phone, they look up and see what's going on. So waiting for the answers is important. And you could maybe count to 10 in your mind and then start answering your own question, because you need to have the answers in case nobody answers your question. So, which brings me to another important tool of keeping attention of the audience. And this is pause. Pausing is one of the most efficient ways of grabbing attention of the audience, because it interrupts the monotonous flow of the speech. And also there is a rule of awkward silence, that we pause for 20 seconds. It's becoming awkward for the audience and somebody will say something. and you can then break this awkward silence and proceed further on. And to demonstrate that, I want to show you very short video about a comedian who just appearing on stage, and you will see how he uses pauses to attract attention of the audience. The volume is not very loud, but we are focusing attention on the pauses.
Appearing December the 9th at the Miami Beach Theater of Performing Arts, and the 8th of December at the Playhouse Theater in Winnipeg, Canada. Would you welcome, please, Yakov Smirnov.
Hi. My name is Yakov Smirnov. I am a comedian from Russia. Thank you very much. I like it here in the...
All right. So you noticed that he actually used the pauses 3 times. The first was very short pause, maybe a couple of seconds. The second pause was maybe 5 seconds. And then the longest pause was about 14 seconds long. And so far, he did not say anything funny. He said, "Hi, my name is Yakov Smirnov. I'm a comedian from Russia. Thank you very much." Nothing really funny. But the audience reacted to that because it expected something. And it was waiting for it to happen. So he grabbed attention from the audience. The audience started applauding. The same happens in regular presentations. When you pause, you grab attention of the audience. And you can just, and another purpose of the pause is to let the audience absorb what you just mentioned to them. Because constant flow of information is not very good. You are not allowing people in the audience to absorb what you say. Even pauses for 2-3 seconds after each sentence are very, very helpful. Another aspect is to tell personal stories and personal experience. It is much more important for the audience to hear what you have experienced compared to some famous person maybe, or somebody the audience may not even know. The audience sees you in front of them, and your experience is very important. Just like I mentioned, for example, I mentioned that I presented to my boss. I did this or I did that. It is my experience. I'm sharing that with you, and it is appreciated a lot by the audience. Another aspect, if the presentation is quite long, you need to change the direction at least a little bit every 10 minutes or so to keep attention. Non-standard illustrations. At the engineering presentation, Victoria Clark, an engineer who works with me, she introduces 3 stages of the project. And she named these stages Squirtle, War Total, and Blastoise. You probably know, I didn't know, that all of these are Pokemon. And this is a serious engineering project. And she just decided that naming the stages of the project this way will make it more memorable. And of course, she introduced every stage of project properly, and everything was done very professionally. But the names remained in the mind of the audience. So that's another example of doing something not very standard in order to attract attention and to make your presentation more memorable. Too much. When we present a little too much and give too much information, we actually confuse the audience and squeeze them out. So it's important to make sure that it's not too much. It's better to give a little bit less of the information than too much. Because if we don't pause, if we constantly talk and speed up our speech, the audience will not absorb it well. And that's important of the pauses, importance of not doing too much of the presentation. Another aspect of the presentation is finish on time. Quite a few times for myself, I was asked, well, I know we originally gave you 20 minutes of the presentation, but now you only have 10 minutes. So please finish your presentation in 10 minutes. It's very important for the organizers, for the people in the audience to finish on time because they have other plans. So finish on time. How can you cut immediately your presentation from 20 minutes to 10? What helped me is having this one sentence goal, because I formulated beforehand, this is the goal of my presentation. Therefore, I can skip these slides during the presentation and focus on the other ones, because the main goal is that one. So keeping this one sentence goal in mind helps you in many, many different ways. Conclusions. Conclusions, something that is like a dessert of the fancy meal, right? It's something memorable, something to remember about the meal. And what I decided to do, I decided to give you some non-standard suggestion. And this is something that maybe you could try not to do in the very end of the presentation. And it is QA. If you question and answers. So if you have such an ability, maybe you could try to put it a little bit before the end of the presentation. Why? Why? Because the end of the presentation, the conclusions, they should iterate the main point, something that should be memorable. And in the process of the question and answers, it may deviate to some side non-important issue. And that's not something that you want to leave your audience with. It's not possible to do every single time, to have question and answers before the conclusions, but maybe if you have such an option of structuring your presentation, try it out. In my experience, it works out quite well. So what to do in the conclusion if it is not a question answers is to reiterate the main point of the presentation and maybe call to action. What something should or should not do. And of course, make it clear that it is the end of the presentation. And one important aspect is to ask for what you want. Asking for what you want is important. Even when we talk with our boss and we hope that our boss will do something for us. What I realized is that when I'm talking to my boss and I'm asking explicitly for him, well, please make sure that this method will be used by the different groups. Please talk to another manager in order to implement it in their work. It makes it clear for that person whom you are talking to what he should do. If I don't explicitly ask, another person has to guess, and he may guess wrong. And asking explicitly helps that person. If I'm asking for a raise, if I'm asking to increase my salary, if I ask with some substantiation, that's what I want. Okay, now he knows, and the worst what can happen, he can say, no, I cannot do that. Okay, well, then I am where I was in the beginning, so I have not lost anything. But asking is very important. In addition to that, something memorable, something that the audience could remember about your presentation. In my specific example, as when I was starting my career at Boeing, I was working with the engineering field called optimization. I used the example of the last slide in the PowerPoint. I did something like this. And it's James Bond, of course. And some people came afterwards and they told that now my presentations always associate for them with this picture, which great, as long as they remember this word optimize. But then the lady came to our group and she said, well, she doesn't like weapons. She doesn't like military. So we changed this to something different. Now we were finishing the presentations with this, which is very popular in America picture. And then we decided, well, maybe it's too political or some people don't like that. So we started finishing our presentation like this. Again, something to remember about, something to uplift the audience in the end of the presentation, but also to emphasize that that was the main part of the presentation. We want people to use optimization. All right. The next portion will be PowerPoint. But before we go to the PowerPoint, let's maybe stop our presentation and see if now that you have heard about presentation, if you are willing, if you want to, do you want, if you could present maybe 1 minute, 2-minute presentation, and I could try to point out what you did well and what maybe could be improved. How about that?
All right, anyone want to try giving about 1.5 minutes to present what you want to talk? All right, anyone? Raise your hand. I will call one at a time.
Maybe before, thank you to him. And before that, can I have a questions for our speaker today?
Sure, of course.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us and giving such a valuable information today. I just have one question and to get to know more about the process when you're getting into the speech. Normally, we will start from the message and you will collect the personal stories from yourself to connect to that message in order to support that. But I know that there are some other way around when they reversed from that process. They started from the personal story and they try to find the message in that story. So in your from your point of view, which one is more effective, especially for the beginners to start to write a speech and prepare for that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a great question. One, for me, I work both ways. Sometimes I try to think of a story that I could tell, a personal story, and then to find in the message. But it's the more and more I speak, I try to connect the message to the story, and sometimes the story that I originally wanted is changing because it does not reflect the message very well. So starting with the story is perfectly okay, even if you don't know what is the message of the story. Maybe if you write it out or if you tell that story for yourself, just once, you tell it to yourself, you could see what it tells you about. What do you want the audience, again, to do as a result of this story? What we mentioned in the very beginning, to think about what do we want the people to think, feel, or do differently. And even if you don't have the message in mind in the very beginning, maybe the story itself will tell you what this message is. For example, I once, for the Toastmasters clubs, when I was making the presentations, I started with a story, and I thought I want to make a story about a book that I read, just fictional book, and I started telling the story to myself, and I realized, well, this actually has emotions in the book, and I realized, well, now my message could be that it is emotions in the book are very important, and eventually I crafted my speech in the form that fictional books, well-written fictional books, classical fictional books, could be more important than the books by authors that are telling you to do something. For example, 1,000 useful habits, and they list some useful habits. Yes, that's important. And like 10 things to do like during your work day. Yes, it's very important. But when you read the fictional book, the good fictional books involves emotions, and using emotions helps you to grow yourself as a person. And that's eventually ended up being the message, that fictional books evoke emotions, and it is important to grow as a person. So this was the message that I ended up with. Is it clear, more or less?
Yeah, I understand what you meant.
That
Thank you.
if I don't have a message from the start that I want to illustrate, I start with a story and I hope that it will come up. But it requires several tellings of the story and thinking of different possibilities of what could be the message of the story. So it requires a little bit more thinking of the message when I start with a story without a message.
Yeah, because somehow it's like, because we think too much about the message.
Yes.
We want something is really special and
Yes.
make a great impact on our audience. So I think it's take quite a long time.
Yes. And the story is very important. Story is very important. And sometimes when you have a nice story, you can sort of adjust your message to fit the story the other way around. And it's perfectly okay. It's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, definitely. All right. Somebody wants to make a presentation, and if you don't want, I don't want to force you, only if you want.
Our time is precious. Anyone want to try? I would like to invite Gina Gwen. She always volunteer first.
Thank you,
Right.
Chu Hyun. Well, I'm thinking that how about 1 minute or 1 minute or two presentation, like I will say something or I will use a slide to talk about something because I'm not clear. Uh,
It can be anything. The main goal is just for you to talk and see, maybe get some feedback from me on how that can be improved. And the time is not strict. We will not be timing. So if you take 1 minute or 2 minutes, it's okay.
but I mean that should I start my part like I am
What
presenting
if
something
you
in
want to,
front
you
of an
can use
audience?
slide.
Anything?
You can use PowerPoint if you want to. If you don't want to, there is no need. You don't even have to use the video. You can even turn off your video and talk without video.
Yeah, because I don't have any available PowerPoint to
No,
use
no.
it right now. And you please just give me a few minutes. So let me come up with what I would like to say in 1 minute,
Okay.
if it's possible. So, chị Hằng, Nguyễn, or anyone else, if you have your ideas in your mind, could you please present first?
So can I have one more questions, please?
Sure, definitely. Let's talk. I'll try to answer all your questions. And again, there is
Yes.
no need for presentation. It's if you want to, please go ahead. If not, let's. I'll try to answer all your questions.
Yeah, I think it is opportunities for our members to actually practice in front of an expert like you, so they can get more like feedback. My question is about the message point, as you said. So we all understand that the message is really important, and you need to stay to the message point so that you are not distracting the audience from your speech. Is there any kinds of tip that you usually use in order to make sure that your presentations only stick to one message? And also, is there any tips that you usually use in order to write the message effectively? So could you share with us?
All right. A great question. What I typically do is I write it for myself first. And it can be not very well formulated, not very nicely formulated. And it can be not a single sentence initially, but maybe several sentences. And then I try to compress it. And that message, that main goal of the presentation, that single sentence, I don't always even mention it to the audience. It is something that I remember for myself. And it can be slightly different from what you tell the audience to do, what you want the audience to act on. How do you want the audience to act? And for them to remember that better, this action that they need to take, something that they need to do. One of the efficient methods is to mention it somewhere in the beginning of the presentation, that goal, that action that you want the audience to take. Then incorporate it somewhere in the speech, and then circle back to the beginning in the very end, in the conclusion, circle back to the beginning. In this way, you repeat it 3 times, and especially mentioning if it is the Toastmaster speech or if it involves some emotions, maybe you can paint some picture in the very beginning, or if it is a technical presentation, maybe some mention of some method in the very beginning. And then you sort of evolve your presentation and in the very end to repeat what you have done in the very beginning, because in this case, the audience members will recall that they have already seen something before, and they recall it better. So this is one of the ways to make them memorize better, to make a loop back to the very beginning and maybe mentioning it in the middle also. Sometimes it also keeps an intrigue, some suspense, because especially if it is a non-technical presentation, if it's a Toastmaster presentation, you mention something in the very beginning, you describe a picture of something, you paint a picture in words, and then you switch to your main presentation. And that leaves the audience in suspense, in a question, what was it about? You describe some scenery, you describe how you woke up and the nice bright light happens, and then you continue further on presentation. And in the very end, you come back and you reveal what is behind this scene. So that suspense that goes from the beginning to the end makes the audience remember your message better. Does it make sense?
Yes, yes, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions, please? Comments? Something you want to hear about? We still have some portion of the presentation. It's not finished. We'll talk about confidence. We'll talk about preparation. We'll talk about PowerPoint.
Yeah, I may have one more question.
Okay.
In order to give Thi some more time to prepare. Yeah, I actually have some problem with pauses when I speak. And I believe that when there's a lot of my students as well, they have some problem with the pauses because they try to speak so fast and a lot during the presentations. Is there any ways that you practice pauses that can help you to really utilize the power of the pauses in your speech?
Yes. The pauses are very hard. You are not alone. I had problems with the pauses. I'm still having problems with the pauses. It's very, very hard. What I try to do is I try to force myself. I say several sentences and then I stop and inside I count to 3 or I count to 5. And you may ask your students to force to stop because my colleagues engineers, they speak without pauses and it's very hard to understand. It's after a while, I don't remember anything and I stop understanding. Whereas when we pause, even short pauses gives the opportunity to reflect. So I force myself to stop talking. Stop talking for 3-5 seconds and practice it just during your talk. It doesn't require much of structured pause. I pause here, I pause there. Yes, it's possible to do that and it's effective. But to start, just after several sentences, when you think that this sentence was important, pause for 3-5 seconds, count to 3, count to 5 in your mind, and continue further on. And it's important, like I mentioned, to say maybe a little bit less, but with pauses, than more without. Because when you say more without pauses, it will be lost. Great. Thank you. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes. Actually, in Toastmaster, we need to follow pathway and we need to do some project. And we will have a presentation in our class, right? So actually, when I do the projects, I just and had the present, I just focus on myself because it's my project, and I just share my stories, share my opinion, share my thoughts, and I think that I didn't care about audience because it's my project. So I just want to say anything I want. I think that is it's so difficult to connect the personal stories with common stories and make it become the common problem with other audience. So how do you think to we continue to follow pathway, but we can make it become common or popular with audience and help them or maybe create the connection among speaker and audience.
It's yes, you share your stories, that's great, and you share your emotions, that's very, very good. That's the most important part. What is important about the audience that, for example, if if you're presenting to the audience of another country like right now, I realize that it's not necessarily if I start referring to American cartoons, for example, it will not be necessarily as effective for you because maybe you have not seen these cartoons. If I will be talking to international audience, or if I'll be talking to engineers, I may use some formulas. Whereas if I'll be talking to the teachers exactly on the same subject, there is no need to use the formulas. So it is slightly adjusting the material of how to make the audience understand you better. And if I'm talking about the rockets to the high school students or middle school students, I will maybe show them the rocket and show how it launches. But when I'm talking to engineers, maybe I'll show them the equations of how it works and why it works and which works better. So similar material could be slightly adjusted to the audience. That's what's important. But the most important is what you mentioned, is sharing your emotions. And you are not particularly caring about the specific pathway. Yes, I am totally supporting what you are doing in that respect. It is just reflecting that your audience understand it better. So you are looking at improving understanding of the audience. So that's what's important. Following exactly their pathways is, they try to help you, but it is up to you to adjust that to your specific needs. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I got it. I know that actually we try to use our story to share our experience and have
Yes.
Maybe audience have different view.
Yes.
And if they meet the situation in the future, they have experience about this and they can maybe find the methods or anything. Yes, I got it. And I just when I when I see your presentation, I understand one thing, that actually when we present anything, we need to have maybe some pause to make our presentation have the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we just speak and we don't have any distance in our idea or any any thoughts, it can make our presentation look too fast
Yes.
and difficult to follow.
Yes.
And I just try to practice to have some pause in the next time.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes. Yes. And one other important aspect is to try, why I was talking about the audience more, is whenever you are making any presentations to Toastmaster Club, try to talk to the audience, that you are telling your personal story, but make it to the audience so that you are telling it for them, for the audience. It's not that you are just filling the blank and fulfilling some pathway. No, you're telling something to the audience to make the experience better. So, and it is very clear when people just make a presentation to make a presentation, to show themselves, as opposed to people who are trying exactly the same words, but trying to communicate to the audience, to relate to audience a little bit better, to lean into the audience. And that's where emotions help. And that's where smile helps. I mentioned smile several times already. And when you smile, it really reflects that you want to connect to the audience. It is very, very attractive and makes you an appealing presenter, a presenter whom the audience would like to hear. whether the presentation is serious or not so serious doesn't matter. Smiling is very, very important. So please, for everybody, please smile during your presentation. It's one emotion that should definitely be in every presentation. All right, thank you. If we have just one presentation, maybe just one very short, and then we'll finish with the main presentation. So, Ngok, do you want to present? If you don't,
actually have.
I'm not really ready, but let me try. I have
Okay.
to take advantage of this chance. Let me share the screen.
it could be very, very short. Yeah.
Yes, can you see my?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. Now, as you can see on the picture, who can tell me the flavors or the taste that you can taste from the objects in the picture? And you can you type it in the chat box? Or just turn on your mic and say the flavors. Sweet, yes, thank you. That's honey, the sweet, yes. Salt, yes. Yes, sour, yes, from the lime. We have cheese at the end. Yes, cheese, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, everyone. And some people think cheese is fat to them. So I say fatty. And we have the cabbage here. The cabbage has its own flavors, and we can call the taste of cabbage or the food that has its own flavors umami. So many of us here have tried all 5 tastes, and some of you have not tried some of the tastes here. And sometimes you say that you love to try them, or you say, no, I don't like it. I will avoid to try them. In our life, it can be the same. The events that takes place in our life, some people are willing to take it. Some people want to experience it, and some people want to avoid it. The feeling of sorrow, happiness, thrilling, stressful, they are like the spices of our life. So when you want to lead a meaningful life, do you want to taste all the flavors or just taste some flavor that are your favorite ones and avoid the others? So I want to ask you, what flavors do you want to take? And what flavors are you still afraid to taste? Is it leadership? Is it competition? Is it vulnerability? Is it saying yes to something that scares you? This life is not meant to be observed from sidelines. It is meant to be tasted fully, boldly, and joyfully. Because at the end of your journey, you won't regret the things you tried. You will only regret the flavors you never dared to taste. So while you are here, everyone, try the role, give the speech, join the events, wake up early with ETTC, taste on the flavors, and become a person of flavor. Thank you, everyone. I will
Oh,
just
thank
stop
you.
here.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. Thank you
Actually,
so
it is
much.
a part, yeah, it is a part of I'm gonna join a division contest next month, and the key message that I want to deliver is taste on the flavors, and I'm working on that. And I'm not done yet, so just some ideas for now,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Very quick couple of thoughts. I really enjoyed. Well, first of all, you were very brave to actually present. I'm not sure if I would be that brave as you are to make the presentation. So thank you very much. I really like your picture. You started with a good question and you waited for the answers, which is great. And sometimes the answers may not come, and then you need to answer yourself. So, and you went nicely into your presentation. So it's very well done. You had questions during the presentation, which is again very good. I also enjoyed that you left the audience with some message, some action and item to taste everything. What I think could enhance your presentation that you could consider doing is to put your personal examples, because all of what you were saying is correct and true, but your personal example, that's what brings everything to life. So some illustration of these tastes in your life, maybe one or two, would be very helpful. But again, I really enjoyed your presentation. Your call to action was very nice and very good structure of this short presentation. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, let's quickly finish our main part of the presentation. Let me share the screen again. All right. Hopefully you see the presentation, right? So we're talking about the PowerPoint. So one aspect of the PowerPoint is that lots of people think that PowerPoint is the most important part of the presentation. No. It is actually the tool to support you. It's not the other way around. PowerPoint is a supporting tool, just like gestures, just like a smile. Another one is the PowerPoint. And all the rules about the PowerPoint, all the rules that we need to have this many lines, and the font should be this big, the picture, so on. All the rules of the PowerPoint, they come from one natural rule of the human being. And once you understand it, all the other rules will follow as a sequence of that. And this most important rule of the PowerPoint is that we, as humans, we can either read or we can listen. And it is or, either read or listen. All the rules about the PowerPoints, they come from that. That's why when we present something like this in our PowerPoint, we will not listen to the presenter anymore because it's hard to read. On another hand, another extreme is that if we hear Steve Jobs like this, with this presentation, we are concentrated solely on the presenter because the picture is absorbed very fast in one blink of an eye, and we are back focusing on the presenter. So that's why we need to have only the fewer words in the presentation so that it could be read quickly. That's why the pictures, because they are absorbed very fast. That's why the specific headlines and bullet points. All because we as humans can either read or listen. All because of that. One other aspect of the PowerPoint is to introduce acronyms. In all aspects of life, we have acronyms. Try to introduce them because not all people in the audience know them. And not too many animations. And if you are trying to put something that you will not be talking about, consider not putting it into the PowerPoint. So everything that is on the PowerPoint should be mentioned when you talk. And often the PowerPoint is a substitute for the Word document. And when we need to introduce some equations, complex formulas, or some long writings in the PowerPoint, create an appendix for it. But the main portion of the PowerPoint should describe the reason for the work, the benefits, and should have short specific bullet points. Example of my personal PowerPoint presentation. Of course, it's very technical in this case, but that's what I try to balance. I try to put some pictures. I try to put a little bit of words. And why words are there at all? Because if I give that slide to somebody else, they will be able to understand what's going on. If there are only pictures and I give this slide to somebody else, they will not be able to understand what's going on. So some words typically are important. But in today's presentation, what we saw was presented, the slide was perfect. It was illustrating the main point very, very well, and it didn't require any words. So again, PowerPoint should be supporting your presentation, should be supporting you, not the other way around. And now we'll talk a little bit about what not to do during the PowerPoint. So anybody remember what movie is this from? Well, it is Rusty Ryan's Ocean's 11, and at this point, the Brad Pitt's hero is talking to somebody else, and he's telling, for God's sake, whatever you do, don't, under any circumstances. So my advice for you, don't, under any circumstances in the PowerPoint, when doing PowerPoint, try not to use the notes, because this disconnects the audience from you. Of course, it's possible to use notes and look at them from time to time, but don't read them all the time. Another don't is don't stay behind the podium if possible, because podium introduces a barrier between you and the audience. So get out of the podium if you can. Sometimes we cannot do it because the microphone is only there and we need to stand there. But if you can, don't stand behind the podium. And most importantly, don't face the slides. Please don't face the slides all the time. It's possible to glance at them, of course, once in a while, but not all the time. All right, so that's about the PowerPoint. Now, how to prepare yourself. Of course, we do, as presenters, we try to repeat the presentation and we recall our presentation all the time, and it's important, but what audience expect is confidence. And even if we as presenters feel something like this, the audience should see something like that. confidence. So how to prepare for that? One tool, very practical, power pose. Power pose. So when you stand like this before the presentation, somewhere in the dark corner when nobody can see you, when you strike that pose and stay like this for half a minute, you will feel more confident because the blood flow improves through your body. And standing straight and having chin up and striking this power pose helps you to increase your confidence a little bit before the presentation. Another aspect of the confidence. Think about one of the fictional or real person that you think is very confident, or maybe confident in the movie that you saw. And over here you see 6 very different people, very different attitudes, but all of them have confidence. So what I do personally, I try to imagine myself as maybe as James Bond or Brad Pitt, imagine like that, and saying to myself, now I'm going to present and I will look like this. And saying that to yourself, nobody needs to hear that, but imagining yourself like that helps you again to boost your confidence. And it's important to focus on what you can control and not to worry about what could happen. Just concentrate on what you can do at this moment, not on what might happen during the presentation. Another aspect is not to consider yourself above the audience and not to compare yourself to anybody else. But when you get out, you are making the presentation that nobody else knows better than you. And that is true for all the presentations. So don't compare yourself to anybody. So what to do during the presentation is open your mouth. The opera singers open your mouth and your voice project. This increases confidence. Focus on a single person during the presentation, during a couple of sentences, and then shift focus to another person. And that makes the audience think that you are talking to them. And look that person into the eyes, not just on the forehead, into the eyes. One aspect of practice is try to speak up in every meeting that you attend. Every meeting that you attend. Maybe asking questions. That always helps. Helps you to practice. What happens if you freeze during the presentation? What's important is to acknowledge the situation and say, sorry, it completely escaped my mind. And this happens to everybody. The same as a negative person. Acknowledge, pause, and suggest to discuss it after the presentation. How to practice? Don't repeat over and over again. That's not very efficient. Rather than that, split your presentation into several pieces, maybe 3-5 parts, and repeat start practicing part number 5. Once you repeat it without mistakes, start practicing part 4 and part 5. And then part 3 through part 5. Why? Because once you are done practicing the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you repeat part 5, the most important part, so many times that you will remember it very well. And this, of course, I did not invent it. My wife using it when she makes her students practice piano. And finally, to end our presentation, some additional resources, and you will get the presentation. Lance Miller, world champion of public speaking, and Simon Sinek on leadership. And we already went through questions and answers, so I want to summarize, to finish on time. I want to summarize everything that we presented is that the audience is important, the main goal, the brief bullet points and pictures, and confidence. That's what's important. If I have to summarize the whole presentation, that would be it. And something that I forgot, and this is magic bullet. And this magic bullet is record yourself. If you are brave, you'll record the video. If you are not that brave, record audio. You will uncover so many things that you could do to your own presentation on your own without even the feedback. And of course, practice, because practice makes perfect. And finally, what I want to leave you with at the end of the presentation, you could probably guess my last slide, and it is this one. So thank you. Thank you for attending the presentation. Thank you for your great questions. If you have more questions, I'll gladly answer them. If there is time, if you want to stay a little bit more. Thank you again for
Thank you,
attending.
Vladimir. Anyone like to ask him more questions? Or you can leave your evaluation in the group chat, and I will forward your evaluation. Thank you notes to Vladimir. So now it's just open discussions. Any questions? Chị Thủy. All right, so what I learned from the presentation today is about when you speak with the audience, because when you speak, someone will listen to you. They hear you. They hear you. Pause, because everything you say, take time. Give the audience time to soak in your idea. What I like about the presentation, Balami, is what make them think about your speech, feel about your speech, and what's the call to actions. Do what you recommend. That's how you hook on the audience, because we're in sales every day. Không, chị Hằng, I've been following the kids zone. You in sale every day?
And I will send the slides to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I will
And you
receive
can-
it Monday and I forward it to my best buddy in Vietnam. Any questions before Vladimir?
I can stay as long as you need. I thought it's the end of the. I thought it's the end of the meeting. The end because you need to go somewhere. If you have time and you have more questions, I will gladly stay.
Yes, may I have a question? I would love to stay longer, but I'm sorry, as to give you to say we are teachers and we have class, so I would like to ask you this question, and then may I ask to leave? So, as a distinguished Toastmaster, I believe that you have joined several district conference and even international conference. So in this year, I am in charge of the sales team for district conference, and I would like, and so as you said that when we are presenting, we are selling, we are in sales position. So I would like to learn from your experiences, how can we present about the benefits of the district conference to the Toastmaster members and to non-Toastmaster members. Because right now I see that a lot of people are thinking about this because of finance. They have to buy the ticket and they also have to pay for traveling fee and accommodation. So if you were a sales leader of the district conference, how would you persuade Toastmaster members and non-members to join the conference? Thank you.
That's a very good and very difficult question. Very difficult. I'll have hard time answering the question. One aspect that comes to mind is the benefits that their live speaking brings. When we go to the concert of their singer of our favorite group or the symphony concert, it is much, much better live than listening to CD. The same applies to speaking. When we listen to the speaker live, you learn much, much more than watching the video. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is communicating, talking to fellow Toastmasters, to presenters who are presenting on stage and asking them the same question that you're asking me, because they may have slightly different answers. They may have completely different answers. And looking at different opinions and communicating, that's what I think the conference is all about. Networking, connecting with people who think like you. Because we become what are the people who surround us. If we surround ourselves with people who don't want to do anything, we'll slowly become the same. If we surround ourselves with people who are aspiring to do something, who are very enthusiastic about something, we will also become such people. So district conference is that opportunity to hear live speakers, to network with the like-minded people, and to get experience yourself by connecting with the speakers, with the audience. That's something that probably my experience.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure, definitely.
Well, I agree with Vladimir on that quote. That's you surround with people with same passions, same goal, then you become better with them.
Craig Valentine, maybe you have heard about him. He is one of the world champions, former world champions, Toastmaster speaking, I think in 2000, quite some time ago already. In one of his keynote speakers, he has a metaphor about the crabs in the barrel. And the crabs, they don't even put the lid on the barrel with the crabs. You maybe know about it more. Why? Because when one crab wants to get out, the other crabs grab him and pull him down. So we don't want to be the crabs in the barrel. We want to get out of this barrel. So, and one of the ways of doing it is connecting to the people whom we like, connecting to the people whom we want to become. We want to become like this person, so we need to connect to such people. And it's for me, it was very inspiring attending the live conferences, because especially if there are good keynote speakers, former world champions and so on, seeing them in person is so much better than video. And again, connecting with like-minded people who are enthusiastic, it made myself very enthusiastic too. I'd be very happy to come back and present something to your club again. I can present on humor. It doesn't have to be the whole hour. It can be much shorter presentation, part of something else. I can present on humor for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Give you a short short tips on how to make your speech humorous or how to incorporate humor in your presentations. So that's Kim may organize that also.
Jihan, I just saw you raise your hand. Jihan, want to say anything?
Yeah, I want to ask you a question.
Of course.
When we attend a contest, like for example, a division contest, we know exactly our audience. They're all from Vietnam, and usually we will share the same belief, the same culture, and it's easy for you to construct a message that can relate to them. But when it comes to the district contest or international contest, you face the global, like the international audience. And now you need to build a global message that related to all of them, right? So do you have any kinds of do you have any ways that you often use in order to construct a global message that can relate it to everyone? Or like a kind of like how you prepare to have different like people from different like source of life and countries in your audience, and how you connect them to your speech?
I think the important aspect of the life are universal, regardless of where we live. And the important is not to focus your presentations and your stories on very specific aspects of your culture. For example, I'm from Russia, right? And if I start talking about some specific Russian traditions, and well, I need to explain them, which takes time from the rest. But if I'm talking about, oh great, I'm so happy about our new listener, our new person attending, great, so nice. Thank you for showing it to asking to us. Thank you. So there, I think talking about what you experienced, what your emotions are, is important. You can use the settings from Vietnam, and it will be understandable if you describe them even briefly. But the emotions that they are universal. And for example, when I was in one of my speeches, I was describing how I was running a race on the hill in Colorado in United States. And I tried to avoid, I described, yes, here is the mountains, and that's how I ran. And the lady came up behind me, and I was the very last running, and so on. So I tried to involve something that did not require specific understanding that it really happens in the United States. It could have happened exactly the same situation somewhere else. So try to avoid being overly detailed in the country-specific region. You could be detailed in emotions, describing, for example, how I breathed really heavily, and I showed it to the audience, and how I ran a little bit. That, again, could be described and should be described because it's emotional. Another aspect, try to involve different feelings, both visual and taste, maybe taste sour, and how you felt it. So it's you feel, you taste, you see, and you hear. So you hear squeaking, so squeaking sound, so describing the sounds, describing what you view, describing, painting the picture. That's universal, and that helps in communicating the universal feelings, because emotions, that's what sells the speech, that's what makes it appealing. And don't forget to smile. Yes, that's
Well, if you like this presentation, please give a note in the chat group. Then I will forward your thought to Vladimir on Monday. Any more questions? I know we have to go teaching. I think Vladimir, please make us recognize us as a part of your community. I mean community because we welcome back you anytime.
Yes,
Short
I will be very
presentation.
happy to come back.
Yeah, 30 minutes. Give us some hint so we can be better communicator next time. Of course, we in sale every day. Everybody in this ticket is in sale. You try to get more audience to your facilities or your organizations. So how to convince them, how to let them know that's the value you give them. Let them see your value so they can come. They will come. With that, I would like to say thank you and good morning, Vietnam. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you so
much.
much, Vladimir, and we'll welcome you back
Thank you.
to
Yes.
our club. Yeah. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Yes.
much.
Cảm ơn chị Bình nha.
Yes.
Bye
Okay,
bye. See you next
bye.
time.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Yes.
Good night to you.
It's a new day in Vietnam.
And
Maybe good night to our
good evening
speaker.
to
Yes.
you. What time is it now at your place?
Now it's getting to 5 in the evening. 4:45.
Okay.
In the afternoon, right?
Yes. Yes, in the afternoon.
Yes, so have a nice dinner.
Thank you.
Are you going to prepare your dinner tonight or any plan to go out?
No, at home. So,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And we hope to see you soon
yes.
in our club. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.